You're listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies. And today, my guests are Sandy Reynolds-Wasco and David Wasco, and they are Oscar winning production designers and art directors for La La Land. And I'm so excited to have you both on the show. Finally, to have you both here.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
having us.
Well, ever since we met this fall at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival's Riviera Theater, which is such a jewel here, I knew immediately that I would definitely wanted you both on the show. So I'm glad we were able to work this out for sure. So I'm just very excited to have you both here. There's so many questions I have, but first I want to start with, how did you both get started in this industry as doing production and art design?
Um, I'll jump in.
Well, I followed
Yeah,
him, so he should
yeah,
start.
yeah.
So, oh,
Okay.
I've always been interested in movies ever since growing up. Kind of like the Spielberg story, doing Super 8 in high school. And I had a very creative family. Always were interested in movies. And I, uh, in contrast to Sandy, I have no formal training. Sandy has formal training, art history major. I just went for it. I moved to Hollywood in 1981, and it was an odd, quiet time because there was a writers directors strike. And even though I didn't have any experience, I uh, I had a friend tip me to an interview. There was an independent movie because there was a big strike happening, and there were no movies happening in Los Angeles. And I had an opportunity to go in and interview a with an art director that was doing a fantasy epic period movie, kind of like Conan the Barbarian. It was called The Beastmaster, and he hired me, and I was employed for a year. This was before working with Sandy, but I was employed for about a year as the art, kind of like the art department coordinator. So I interfaced with all of the construction departments and all of the different whatever. I was in charge of the budget, so it was an eye-opener experience with starting into the film business. And after that, I made connections there, which is what I advise all the students that we meet, is to you keep making connections and you keep um, revisiting with the connections that you meet, and you get jobs that way. So through working on that, and I was paid to work on that, even though I had no experience. I made connections with different set construction companies and different art directors, and through those connections, continued to work on small, modestly budgeted movies. And I did a few, and then after working by myself, Sandy joined me, and then really the later part of our career was us working as a team together. And I always pitch Sandy as being like having two production designers, even though Sandy is technically the set decorator, which is in charge. When they give out the Oscar, it goes to the production designer and the decorator. So that tells you how important the decorator is. Um,
you're a
and
fan.
and makes or breaks big budget movies and small movies. So I always pitch, when I get hired, you're getting two designers with what Sandy delivers and what I deliver.
So, so Sandy, how did you get involved with it?
Well, we were both from the East Coast and met there. And I came out after David moved out here for this job he was promised, sort of actually before Beastmaster. It was an interview to do uh work with
Francis
Francis Ford
Coppola,
Coppola.
and it fell through. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had an
but it
interview
fell
set
through.
up.
So that was the big lure. But he came out anyway because of that sort of dream to get into movies. I worked at an editing company for a while. It was really just rentals of equipment and equipment bays and repairs back in the days when it was Motorola's and Steenberg's and all the flatbed editing equipment. But but jumped in to follow David as soon as I could because there were opportunities. We started early on sort of PBS specials based on great writers' stories. And they were always interesting. But growing up, I think I had because people in this industry, in this part of the industry, they come from all kinds of backgrounds. They can come from theater, they come from design, they come from illustration, and primarily a great thing is just a really varied background. So I think my interests were very varied. My schooling was very varied, very varied.
But Sandy also, I'm going to jump in and interrupt. I'll say Sandy actually is an excellent sketch artist. And Sandy, when she came to Hollywood to join me, actually took architectural drafting classes and a few things that really brought her to the level without really a plan to jump into the film business, but it brought Sandy to the level of an art director or a production designer. And those were things that you did prior to us then starting to work together. So when Sandy joined me, it was truly like having a solid art director.
I think it's
by
more
my side.
bringing imagination into it. And I think the training through I had a rural upbringing in New England, but a town, Concord, Massachusetts, was full of history. And I studied history and studied art history and studied fine arts and had a definite lively sort of inner life, just sort of making tales and making little stories anyway as a child, and that growing into be able, fine art and things like that, photography. But also travel and seeing theater and going to galleries and talking to other artists is really just gives you lots of information, gets all the juices going, and is really helpful to design.
The other thing I will say, one of the many benefits of having the team is that often people that do what I do, they'll be brought to a distant city, whether it be in America or Canada, wherever it's busy, and they're challenged with then recruiting a crew. And usually the most important person is the set decorator. The benefit that I have with already having worked multiple movies with Sandy, we already have a dialogue going. We already know how to work with each other. And that is a huge jump in the environment now where there's an emphasis to reduce the amount of time that they allocate for the art department to prep. There's a principal photography start date, which is the day that you work against to get everything ready. And then you are unrolling sets each day as shooting commences. But that prep time is now being reduced, trying to work within frugal budgets and to have the benefit of already having the dialogue and knowing how each other works is a great benefit.
But that can be production designer, art director, and certainly not just married.
Yeah, and we'll have multiple people that we've worked with that I'll try to recruit, especially if we're working in our hometown in Los Angeles, or I may lobby to bring a few additional key people to a distant city.
You've been together quite a long time and working together. How has that, you work together, you're married. How has that affected your relationship? Do you get in arguments about, I think it should be done this way and no, I think it should be done that way? Or, you seem like you're very synergistic from, what I have observed about both of you.
Yeah, Sandy's ideas are there. I think one of the ways I'm successful is that I hire over talented people. And then I think it's very important to let people do their job, to not be telling them exactly how to do their job. And I think that when Sandy is providing ideas, I also like to work in a bullpen environment where it's not private. You're not in separate offices where everybody is listening to everything. And I solicit good ideas from everybody. So when a director will come into the room, Like I said, we're working around a communal table. I'll have a separate office, but my door is open and I'm listening to things. But when a director comes in the room, I like to have everybody listen, stop and listen to the half hour, 45 minutes when the director is talking about what we're trying to do. And then when the director leaves the room, I say, hey guys, okay, um, what did he say or what did she say? And
Yeah.
what's the best way to solve this problem or that problem? And Sandy's always, the ideas coming from Sandy have always been
Well, yeah, and it was
amazing.
just because often the art director is often a character that's in a position that's between works with the decorator and production designer, but there's a
Maybe
close
between us,
relationship.
between us.
So right away, first like week, I'll let that person know that's totally respected. There's nothing that will go straight to David.
Or I'll let that person know, for instance, if we're going to Montreal or to Toronto or Berlin, I'll say this person is going to have a greater voice than
Mhm.
what you're usually used to. And just bear with that.
Well, I
That's how
think
we like to work. So I set that tone
Well,
off the
here we
bat.
go. We're both doing opposite things. So I think too, when you go to different countries, there's a different protocol everywhere you go. So you have to be really aware of that. And we find that it's granted the budget of the movies we do isn't grand, but it's wonderful to go to another country and hire everyone from there because you automatically get a different perspective. And even if you're doing America in, some distant place, the input's good. It'll flavor it and make it a little different. And that's really wonderful.
Yeah, I imagine it does make that, chemistry work a little better when you're doing that. You've worked with some brilliant directors, and you seem like you started your career very early on with Quentin Tarantino. Can you talk a little bit about how you got in? Connected with him to begin with, and you have worked on, I don't know, 8 or 9 of his films, something like that. So
I think he's at number 9 now. We did 7 if you want to break up Kill Bill to 2 movies, but Kill Bill was always one movie. When we were working on it, it was one movie. And then after we were finished with our job and they were editing, they turned it into 2 movies. So we did really the first more than half of his movies. But early on, and again, I'll say prior to working with Sandy, I worked on a movie called El Norte, which won. It was nominated in Cannes for it was nominated for an Oscar for Best Screenplay. And I think it could have won
I
at
think it
Cannes.
did.
So we got a taste of working on script driven, where a script is maybe the most important thing or a quality of a script. So pretty much then everything that I had an agent early on, and those agents, I had multiple different agents, and I would say, I'll get a script, we'll read it together. And we were actually very picky about working on script-driven projects, not projects that might necessarily be big, splashy art direction projects, but something that might be a good story. It might translate into something that's very played down art direction or design, but if it's a good story and a good screenplay, that set us on a path to, yes, we have worked with great writer directors. And often the director was the person that would have written the script. Like we've done a bunch of movies with Dave Mamet, brilliant screenplay writer and director. We did our last movie was the first movie directed by brilliant writer Aaron Sorkin, Molly's Game. We worked with British playwright Martin McDonagh, his very first US movie.
Great.
He's the director that did In Bruges. And then, of course, we work with Wes Anderson. Now, Wes would co-write his scripts with uh,
Owen
Owen Wilson,
Coppola.
a couple of different people, but he's also, it's a script-driven director as well. So
So
we
Wes
work with a
Anderson,
lot of writer-directors.
you worked with Wes Anderson on the Royal Tenenbaums, which is one of my favorites of all of his, and I love his. His films are very stylistic, obviously, and you've worked with him, so you have created that, I'm sure. But there was a really cute story about a young man who came to set that you toured around. Do you want to talk a little bit? Maybe Sandy, you want to share that story, or David?
Well, we did do the first three Wes Anderson movies. So we did help him find his voice.
Yes.
And he, of course, after we did Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and Royal Tenenbaums, they're all great. They're all
Yes.
really cool movies. When we were working on uh, uh, actually, when we were, I'm gonna reverse that and say when we were working on Pulp Fiction, actually, this was an early Quentin movie. Um, we had oh no, this was Royal, it was Royal Tenenbaums. When we were working on Royal Tenenbaums, we were in the house in Harlem, and the director said that he had somebody that I might be mixing that up.
No,
Let me see.
that's right.
Yeah,
It
the
was a
director said that he had somebody that.
friend or
Oh no,
student.
my art director said, "Oh, my neighbor in rural Massachusetts.
Carl.
My neighbor is a young high school filmmaker, and he wants to come and meet us." And I said, "Great, have him come on the set." So what I like to do in helping students, I'll take a break and I'll walk them around, or I'll talk with them. As long as it doesn't get in the way with what we're doing. So this young man comes on the set, and I gave him a tour of the house, which was dilapidated, and we had to restore it. And we filmed virtually everything in the house. And I sent him off. And okay, flash forward 30 years. And I interview for things. I have to interview for things even after we've done a bunch, we've worked on some pretty recognizable movies. And I interviewed, and I actually went after aggressively and got the job to design La La Land, which I'm very proud of. And Sandy, we're both very proud of. It was a wonderfully fun thing to do. The director neglected to tell me when we're interviewing, after I think we were halfway through making the movie, and he said, I didn't tell you when you were interviewing, but when you were working on Royal Tenenbaums, do you remember meeting a young man, a high school guy? He said, that was me. This is the director from La La Land. And it's a true story. So he didn't want to intimidate me when I was interviewing with him to get that movie. I didn't remember him. It was many years later, but that is a true story.
It's a wonderful story. It's about being nice to everyone. You never know.
It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, always, anywhere. I don't care what business it is, but particularly in this one, you don't know who you're going to meet. And because you were so kind and generous to him, I'm sure when he was a teenager, he remembered you, obviously, and the rest is history, because that's the one you won your Oscars for.
Yes.
And I, to be honest with you, I was surprised because we were up against some very
Beautiful
really
films.
beautiful design movies. And I was very proud of very proud of La La Land, but traditionally Hollywood does not award the Oscar to a contemporary present day movie, which it really was. It was not a period movie. And I thought, okay, that's great. We got nominated. Wonderful. We're nominated. Now we've been nominated a bunch of times, and we've been nominated for a BAFTA a bunch of times. But I honestly was surprised that we won.
Yeah.
But it was, I will say, it was maybe the most fun. I'll say some of the early Quentin movies like Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Reservoir Dogs, they were really fun to work on. The director was funny. Damien wasn't so much funny as he knew exactly what he wanted to do. And I think one of the reasons that I got hired is that when I went in, I made a lookbook of visual references for what I thought the movie should look like. And he pulls out his lookbook, and we had so many of the same
Overlaps.
photos,
Yeah.
which
Wow.
was weird.
Yeah.
And we were on the same page. And I think that's one of the reasons that I got hired. But
That's amazing.
it was a joy to work on that movie.
And it's
And
beautiful. I mean, it is beautiful when you go back and watch it again and you see the sequences and transitioning where it goes, in some of the songs. It's just beautifully done, and it's it's just it's a fantasy in so many ways too. That it was so good. Everybody, I don't know how many times I saw that
It was
movie.
lovely to do color. It was
Yeah.
great.
yeah.
So you're also on the Santa Barbara International Film Festival's board of directors, and this year and you have done this in the past, you gave out the awards for the Artisan Awards that they have every year. Let's talk a little bit about that and the Artisan Awards and why that is so important for both of you to be able to give out those
I'm
awards.
so glad that award is offered, because I don't think, ideally, you don't want to know when you're watching a film. You don't want to see what's happening in the details. You don't want to see what the prop person is doing or the hair and makeup people are doing. But in the end, if it's a really good movie, each of those craftspeople, the sound, the music, the production design,
Costumes,
all,
camera.
they affect the audience completely. And they affect the actors. The actors rely on, maybe especially the music and the costumes, but the whole thing, building their environment. The craftspeople need a award. They need to be recognized.
And it's awfully
That's,
nice that they have that
yeah,
category.
yeah.
We often, because I think we're trying to remember, I think we've handed out the award for now 5 or 6
I think
years.
4 years.
No, I think it's, yeah, but we were always wondering if
A long
the
time.
theater would be empty, or because, the festival has these, star actors and directors, and they'll fill the Arlington Theater, which I think is 2,000 seats. If
It
I'm not,
is 2,000 seats.
that's
Yeah.
a lot. Okay.
And
And
they keep packing.
I think when we started, it was at the Lobero,
Yes.
which
Yes.
small,
Yeah.
or it might have been a second year or whatever, but
It used to be always like Monday nights, after the busy weekend at the Libero. And this time it was Saturday night at the Arlington.
yeah,
Yes.
but it was 2/3
I
full.
think that's a credit to them doing it over and over. The audience,
Yes.
they don't know what to expect and they love it and they tell other people, and there you have it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not just the movies are not just the actors and the director. It is a collaboration, and it is really when you get this magic mix of all these departments that are working on the same page and are really contributing and are behind the director. That's when the magic happens. And I would say I'm going to go back to La La Land, and that was a case there.
Yeah,
So.
it was.
That's why I love what I do, because I interview a lot of the behind the scenes craftspeople. That's who makes the movies. So I've had, editors and cinematographers and, art directors and, costume designers and makeup artists and, all of it. It's always interesting to hear, how, when they're doing a film, what they do and how they do it. And I think that's what this show is all about, is highlighting, the making of movie magic, and it's everybody together that creates that magic. And it's not just the actors and directors, although they're extremely important, but it helps them, the actors and the directors, to make their job easier and make the film look more beautiful, obviously. So do you have any front runners this year? I mean, as far as production design, there's so many interesting films this year, and I don't think there's a front runner in any of them. I think
In my book, Wicked is a traditional film, and in that way, I don't know if it's a great or a traditional play. And in that respect, maybe to me, it's not Best Picture, but the costumes and the production design were just amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It was.
And huge and
Well,
wow.
I will also bring up a question where
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about um, a great movie might not necessarily be something like I mentioned before about a great story and a great director, and it could be, Hitchcock did movies where they take place in one room, or where it's not huge sets and big splashy art direction. If a movie is brilliantly designed or very noticeably designed, but is not a not a successful movie, is that really do you separate the design and award that, or do you award something that is a really great movie that's received very well by everybody, but maybe
It's a
downplayed
question.
production design?
Yes.
It's a question that
Also, it doesn't matter.
great production
Small
design
budget,
doesn't
big
necessarily have to be very, very big budget and very, very splashy.
right.
It's like architecture. Like, best architecture isn't necessarily the most expensive house or building. It can be very modest, and that's maybe the best.
Well,
Better
when you
than
bring
something
that
that's
up,
very expensive. So, okay.
when you bring that up, it reminds me of The Brutalist, because that's exactly, I mean, there was a film that was done for 10 million or under 10 million in 33 days. And I thought, I just finally saw it, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And when
The production design had so much to do with the whole
the whole thing, the whole movie, and obviously the architecture, but I loved how they did the credits. That was very creative. I just thought it was I thought it was a brilliant movie.
even the Demi Moore movie, the
Substance.
Yes, that had great production design too.
Yes.
Very simple, beautiful.
I would love to talk to you both more. I could talk to you guys for hours and hours and hours. So I'm going to ask you to come back on the show, but unfortunately our time has run out. But I definitely want to have you back on the
I hope
show.
we gave you
Thank you,
something
Jen.
to work
Yeah.
with. I hope we
Sorry?
gave you something.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure, really a pleasure. It really is. And I look forward to seeing you when you're back in town. And and I'd love to have you back on the show. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, Jan.
Bye. Take care. Have a great day.